afternoon, folks, and welcome to another Flycast Partners presentation. Today's webinar is Can Your Asset Management Tool Do This? Presented by our very own Kyle Hamilton. Now, Kyle has been with Flycast Partners for a few years now and has a specialty in ITAM, ITSM, and a variety of other IT tools. He's been in the industry for a couple decades, so I think Kyle may know a thing or two about the topic. And before we get started, Kyle, let me introduce our organization. Flycast Partners is here to deliver a seriously amazing IT experience founded and staffed by personnel that have many, many years of experience in the IT space. Flycast Partners took the best ideas from the collective experience and added the best components necessary to grow and become a leading value-added reseller in the North American IT market. We offer best-in-class implementation services and training in ITM, ITAM, workload automation, capacity optimization with cost control, as well as business artificial intelligence and enterprise service management, all using ITIL best practice. Our professional services team can easily scale up or down and to meet any needs for any organization, regardless of your size, complexity, or budgetary restrictions. We offer implementation services both on-site and remote, as well as training to help reinforce your company's long-term IT success. Our ongoing remote administration support offerings will enable you to focus on those normal day-to-day operations. Please take the time to call us at 844-FLYCAST. That's 844-359-2278. Or simply visit our website and take a look at the variety of offerings that we have, from tools to training. Even our podcasts are out there. Take a look at our new ITIL training course coming up next week, starting on the 24th, with our very own Chuck Spencer. You'll take that class with some Flycast Partners personnel here, and from 1 to 5 p.m. Monday through that Friday, with a test at the end on Friday. Totally accredited V3 foundations. If there's any training that you're interested, please take a look on our website. Poke around, find some classes that you or your coworkers may have an interest. We encourage you to. With that being said, I'm going to turn this show over to the star for today, and that is going to be none other than Kyle Hamilton. Kyle, how are you doing today, sir?
I am doing very well. Thank you, Rich. Can you hear me all right?
Good. I can hear you fine.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, good afternoon, everyone.
I can't see your screen yet, though.
It should be
there
coming
it goes.
across now.
There we are. Now I can see it. There it is.
So I want to thank everybody for taking time out of your day. We're going to be taking I'm going to be providing you with a flyby of the BMC client management tool. Talk a little bit about what it can provide in the terms of asset management, which can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So I'm trying to cover as much area as possible so it could be as applicable to everybody on the call as possible. First off, it's hard to talk about anything in terms of endpoint management of any kind until you first know what you have to deal with, what's actually out there on the network. So client management assists you there in two ways. Number one, it provides the ability to do an agentless inventory of your devices, providing you with a master list that's going to let you know everything that's out there and actively communicating, whether it's an endpoint, a client device, or something else on the network, like a switch, a router, or phone, or other type of device, so that you understand at a high level what's out there in the estate and can begin making decisions then from this as to which of those devices, pardon me, you want to manage. Now, in terms of management, the client management tool provides agents for Windows, Linux, and Macs, and those can be deployed immediately when you find those devices, when you detect them as they pop up on the network, or you can use the list that's provided from that initial discovery and use this to select the devices that you want to manage and push an agent out to those devices, using this list as your source. Now, once you deploy that agent can then take over making sure you get that, regular hardware, software inventory for the devices, and we'll remove them from this unmanaged list of devices on the network and insert them into your managed topology so you can start to see not only what's out there, but also have visibility into where it's located. So if you've got remote offices, remote locations, spread around in different regions around the globe, you have the ability to deploy relay points throughout the environment so that users have a local resource, whether it's to provide their hardware software configuration information to, or to receive something from in the way of maybe a patch or some application that needs to be installed on those devices so that everything can be done locally versus having to traverse a WAN or wide area links in order to deploy things from a central point. Now, if you look at the inventory that client management provides, it has some summary information that's provided here at the high level, allow you to look at things like the memory and drive and processor and operating system configuration, as well as things like software, identifying installed software and version information, firewall settings, and things of that nature, so that you have the ability to look at the exact configuration of the device. You can also track financial details, things that also pertain to asset management from a life cycle perspective, like warranty and support contracts and other maybe important dates, renewal dates, so that you can record all of that financial information, things like cost and depreciation and things like that, so that not only can you manage the hardware software configuration of the devices, but also be able to manage the life cycle and understand current cost and book value, as well as things like you see up here, which is how long has it been in service, how long till it's time to simply retire the device and replace it with something new. So you have the ability to track other aspects beyond the hardware software configuration. Then you also have the ability with compliance management, which is a module that overlays your inventory, to also give you the ability to look at compliance at a glance, so you can see if you have certain desktop policies, hardware policies, software policies, things like that need to be conformed to. It'll evaluate that inventory information for you and let you know if the device is compliant or non-compliant with that policy, so that you can take corrective action, easily fix that, so you don't have to dig that information out of that inventory yourself. Now, after we've got the inventory, and now that we've got an agent running on the device, we also have the capacity to be able to actively manage it, not just get information from it, but work with it. And that could be in a couple different forms. It may be, full-on remote support, remote control needs, which almost everybody has, the ability to just reach out and support users remotely, whether it's training assistance or just being able to perform work remotely on devices, so that that's available through the agent, but also the ability to work with the device directly, so that in situations where the screen sharing session isn't necessary, it still provides a means for you to be able to go and work with the device remotely to make changes or corrective fixes, whether that be working with the registry of that device or the file system, or starting and stopping something that's running away or needs to be running on the device without having to open up that full screen sharing session, so that you have the ability to to reach out and work with devices directly and make changes and fixes as need be and save on the bandwidth that's getting consumed if you are passing that screen information back and forth. Now, in addition to being able to remotely support, you have the ability to deploy to these devices. And deployment could take the form of deploying a patch. So the patch module will allow you to create automated jobs so that you can manage your environment by simply defining criteria. So we'll say critical desktop patches, for example. And this will allow you to address a much larger range of applications, third-party applications, than most tools, so that you can not just patch Windows and Office and Microsoft tools, but other external vendors, whether it be Adobe to Sun Java and Google Chrome, so that you have the ability to automatically patch a much larger list of applications without having to do so manually. So simply go through and define all of those applications that you want to manage, and you want to make sure remain patched within your environment, and the criteria at the top. And once you go through and you select all your applications, then you have the ability to go through and also define the schedule that you want to make sure that these patches get deployed on or within a certain time of day, certain day of the week, so that you make sure if it's something critical, maybe it needs to be deployed whenever, as needed, or maybe due to other concerns, operational concerns, timing constraints, you need to make sure that no matter what it is, it fits within that window so that other things aren't disturbed. And another big key is being able to target the right device or group of devices. It also gives you the ability to create different groups of users that you can leverage, both within client management, as well as giving you the ability to synchronize with a directory source like Active Directory, so that you can simply use directory containers to be able to target devices. Maybe you want to deploy it to certain groups within the environment. I can simply select that using the directory or one of the groups that I create here within client management, maybe by operating system or hardware type, something like that, so that I can assign those patches to the right group of devices that need them. And when you create a job like that, it'll create a console so that I can now watch as the patches begin to download that are needed, as well as being able to monitor and watch as the actual deployments start to kick off on all the devices that are now assigned to those patches, so that you can use these consoles to manage the deployment, make sure that everything's completing successfully. Now, a deployment could be a piece of software. So client management also gives you the ability to bundle up applications, desktop applications, server, it could be a server database, whatever it is that you need to be able to push and deploy to any of those endpoint devices. And I can take and create these software packages and use those same groups, same devices that are in my inventory, to be able to deploy a piece of software globally to a group or to the entire enterprise if I simply need to assign it to everybody, or some subset. So I could say I want to push this out to all devices, or one of those groups that I'm pulling from the directory. And you also have the ability, if you don't want to simply push a piece of software out to everybody, to potentially make it available to the users directly so that they can request it for themselves. So if I take an example here, here's a client here. You can give them a desktop kiosk, a way for them to access for themselves a pop-up window via that agent that'll allow them to see all those applications that are available to them, and they can simply pull things down as needed, if needed, rather than deploying software perhaps needlessly where a user doesn't require that license or that software to be installed. So this gives them a direct window into both. It could be patches, it could be software, it could be even other kinds of fixes that you want to make available to them so that they have a way to access that content that exists and is being built in client management directly for themselves. So that if they need a piece of software, they can click on it, install it. If they need to run, some kind of fix or some kind of script that you've exposed to them, so that what we call operational rule, then they can simply come in and execute those corrective fixes and those installations for themselves as needed. And you simply make those things available to them through this My Apps portal, and save yourself the time and the hassle of having to manually push things out and let users grab them as needed. Now, the software deployments can also be, a deployment to a device can also be a full-blown operating system. So client management also allows you to both create images. So if you don't have an existing image library that you work with and tools that you use to deploy, you can use client management to create that image library so that you have those different OS images you wish and need to deploy. And those can leverage those deployment groups, assets, devices within your inventory to be able to push an OS image out the same way you can a patch or an application, piece of software. Or you can also create for users that need a particular operating system a boot menu. It can be accessed by booting up to a Pixie server and give the users a menu of options available in that image library and allow the person sitting there, standing there at boot up time to select which particular image to deploy to that particular machine or group of machines if you're going around and doing this on several. So you can manage that image deployment in different ways and different methods depending upon your needs. And if you elect to make that client management agent part of that image, then that'll allow you to do things like the full stack deployment, where the image can install along with any necessary or needed applications and patches to go along with them, so that you can fully configure a device using client management from the point that you boot it up to that Pixie boot, whether it's bare metal or whether it's already got something on the drive that needs to be wiped and replaced, all the way to that logon screen with everything in place and the desktop applications and shortcuts and everything that's needed and necessary sitting there ready to go. And to that end, you also have the use of what's called operational rules, which can be used with patches. It can be used with the remote desktop capability or remote desktop control. It can also be used in OS deployments. And these give you the ability to create more advanced scripted type of fixes, but without having to actually go through and create script. When you create a software package to deploy, it creates a simple one-line command, one-step command to install that piece of software that's sitting there. But you can also take this library of rules, go in and be able to maybe take some steps before that installation takes place or after it takes place if things need to be modified or changed, and to be able to pull from a library of commands that can be executed to do all of those things, whether I need to interact with the user in some way, display some type of messaging or prompt, or to be able to make some kind of update or modification on the device itself. So if I want to go in and change a registry value or create some key that needs to exist so that I can turn something on or off, then I can go in and create those keys, create those values so that I can take these commands that I can add here and add those to my software installation with the ability to go in and order those around. So if I want to display a message box to my user before I install the software and then make the change at the end, now I can go in and create either more custom install for a particular application that may not give you, installation options to be able to make, but you want to be able to make some custom changes nonetheless, all the way to just creating commands that perhaps don't even involve software at all, but things that are routinely required from a support perspective, whether it's as simple as repairing and restoring, a shortcut on somebody's desktop. It can be pretty annoying if you have to, deal with stuff like that all the time, but pretty simple from a fix perspective if you've got something, a rule created to allow you to execute that as needed. To things like, restoring drive access or running a antivirus scan if needed, so that any of those things that you find are repetitive from a support perspective, whether it's a piece of software to be installed or a patch or some other kind of corrective fix, being able to easily craft those within client management and be able to leverage those and use those as you deal with those issues, in the future down the road, as well as leveraging those to make those software, software deployments and OS deployments more custom for your environment than what's offered or available through the standard setup routine. Now, I mentioned compliance once before and talked about it from the perspective of a single device. We also noticed there is here a dashboard view that allows you to see the same information enterprise-wide. So for compliance, whether it's SOX or whether it's PCI compliance, which is dealing with financial transactions, credit card transactions, or some other set of compliance rules or policies, you can create those here in client management and use those to evaluate your inventory, your client devices, to easily see, who has their firewall turned on and who doesn't, who has antivirus software installed. So I can take the results of something like this and find all of these users that don't have their firewall turned on, and I can use those operational rules to go in and turn that firewall on for all of these users that are identified. So once I know who they are and what kind of policy or what rule they're violating or non-compliant with, then that's where I can use those rules or those fixes that I've created for these violations, so that whether I want to do it manually or just simply correct them as they're identified, I can simply report on them later, so that you can make sure that you're in a constant state of compliance, whether it's users that are shutting their firewall off midday or installing software that they're not supposed to have or running software they're not supposed to run, so that you can easily identify those situations and have those corrective fixes ready and available to deploy, whether you choose to do so automatically or as needed through the console. Now, when you're deploying anything from patches to applications to the operating systems, many times in terms of asset management, you also want to be able to manage the applications themselves, whether that's tracking and managing licensing, to monitoring their usage, to prohibiting applications you don't want running, or maybe even repairing and self-healing applications that you want to make sure are always available and always there. So for those devices running that client management agent, we can also discover that inventory, that hardware, software information, and begin tracking and counting licensing for all of that software, from the operating system to the desktop applications that they're running, so that you have an easy ability to see not only what devices are out there and where, but what kind of software is on them, how much do we own, what kind of licensing do we have, and how much do we need, based on that detected quantity or that installed quantity that's out there. So you can easily see where you've got maybe an over-licensed or under-licensed position for any application that's out there and running that you pick up in that inventory. Whether you view it through the dashboards here, through these reports to show the same kind of content, or you can also have those generated as alert or administrative alerts and events, so that as those situations are detected, under license, over license, things like that, being able to get a notification here in the console or an email or a notification sent to that admin letting them know that there's information there related to that licensing position, or and it could be other types of alerts. Things could be hard drive running out of space, all the way to somebody's trying to run a prohibited application, to somebody's violating one of those compliance policies. They've got their firewall turned off, so that you don't necessarily have to be constantly sitting here in the console, monitoring and looking for those situations, but be able to be alerted to them via your pager or email, or if you've got a service desk in place, perhaps even using this to create tickets for those events within your service desk solution, so that somebody actually gets assigned and can complete or resolve those issues, those incidents that get created automatically. Now, everything to this point in terms of management, or we've talked about, and it kind of I mentioned it applied to Windows, Linux, and Macs. I'll also mention that same management capability extends to your iOS devices as well. So at the same time you're scanning your network and you're finding your desktops and laptops and switches and routers and printers and things of that nature, it's also going to be identifying what kind of tablets and phones and mobile devices are out there, so that you also have an understanding of the handhelds, whether they're corporately issued or personally owned. So again, you can begin to make decisions about which ones need to be managed, which ones you want to manage. And it's broken out a little separately from the initial inventory or other devices we looked at, primarily because they're managed in a slightly different way. They do not have an agent like a desktop or laptop to install, but they do have a profile that gets installed on the mobile device that does and serves in much the same capacity. They will allow you as the administrator to control the behavior and configuration of the mobile device, so that while it is connected to the network and using corporate company resources, that you can do things like set those PIN and passcode settings and determine what applications they can and can't use, and what things they can and can't do while they're connected to the network. And then of course things like what network can they even connect to begin with. So being able to define all the settings for the handhelds and the phones so that they have access, needed access, but not undue access, whether those are for, as in this case, guest users that may be simply walking into the offices for, meetings, to employee profiles or executive management profiles that have different configurations, different set of settings and capabilities depending upon who they are. And this is all done via what's called enrollment. So you actually use an Apple certificate, what they call a push certificate, and your users that you designate will get an email letting them know that they can click on a little link and enroll their device to be able to give them access to the network and access to the email accounts and things that they need. And once they enroll their device, this profile then gives you the capability to configure that device and control its behavior while that profile is installed, up to and including some of the key things like being able to issue mobile commands to the devices so that you can do things like lock it if it happens to walk out the back, wipe it, even more importantly, so that if you do lose it, at least it hasn't walked out with company or corporate data on it, all the way to being able to update its inventory information so that you can find out if anything's changed or what that current configuration looks like. So giving you the ability to find out about the mobile devices, being able to apply those profiles to those iOS devices, tablets, and phones, and being able to also issue commands and work remotely with the devices so that you can install the applications you want them to have, and uninstall the applications you don't want them to have, and manage those in between just like you can the desktop and client applications, just in a little different way, different manner. Now, the last piece I want to mention was reporting. And reporting is a big key of all the different phases of asset management, from reporting on life cycle to compliance to software inventory and software licensing inventory. So another key component is having a nice library of those reports, not just the ability to create your own, which you certainly can, so you be able to build reports on any of that collected information and any of your software or patches that you're working with. But more importantly is also having some there that give you that 95% around what most customers need without having to spend time building a lot. So there's we're at close to 200 different reports broken down by the different modules that we've kind of talked about today, from being able to pull the financial reports all the way to reports on what patches are installed or not installed on the devices. Pulled up a couple to show you kind of across those different areas, giving you the ability to see everything from device configuration, inventory information, to being able to highlight, alert you to those software applications that you're exceeding licensing on, letting you know how much you've exceeded or what you need, to being able to report on assets in the financial side, in this case, looking at useful life, and which ones are already way past useful life, which ones are coming up in the next year, you see within the next year or more than a year, so you can manage that retirement and that replacement cycle that you tend to go through, whether it's 36 or 48 or 60 months, whatever it may be. So all of these give you the ability to dive into all of that hardware, software information, or your policies that you've created, as you see here, reporting on that device compliance in this case, I even show you up here what it's truly looking for. In this case, hardware compliance. So, do they have the needed or required hardware? Do they have the memory they need? Do they have the hard drive space they need? Is it up to date like it needs to be? So that you can see, device by device basis. Who we've not heard from yet? Who has the right disk space but not the right memory? Who's lacking the memory but has plenty of drive space? Or who's ready to go? And this could be something related to an OS update. It could be related to an application you're getting ready to push enterprise-wide. You need to make sure that you want to make sure that there's no problems, and you find out they run out of space after the fact, so that you can use these compliance reports to make sure that devices within your environment are compliant with the piece of software you're about to roll out or some change that you're about to make, so that you can mitigate the risk and mitigate the consequences of having to find out after the fact. So lots of good reports that can be pulled back out of client management on all those different aspects that you're using, from mobile to patching to OS deployment. The nice thing you'll find about client management is everything you need to do, from creating the images to setting up software licensing for some application, it can be done through a wizard. And you can access them from the menus over here on the side. You might have noticed I've used one when I went through the patch job creation earlier, but they're available for everything. So if I'm creating an operational rule or I'm creating a new piece of software, there's a wizard for it, so that I don't have to spend time learning how to navigate the menu system or where everything is, or the sequence of steps that I need to go through. I can access a wizard for that task and simply walk through, providing the required information, the prompted information, kind of a next fashion, so that I can easily go through and build that software package, or set up that initial discovery on my network, so that I can find out what's out there without having to spend an undue amount of time in manuals or in lengthy training just to become, I'll call it, even moderately proficient with the tool. As long as you, go in this wizard interface, it'll walk you through smoothly, going through all those key aspects that you're going to want to use, and it puts them all right down here on the home page of your dashboard, so that all those key tasks can be initiated right down here without even having to look at any of that menu that we just talked about. So I know we've got maybe just about 5 minutes or so to go. I want to open it up for anybody that has any questions on anything that we've talked about, or anything that maybe you haven't mentioned or I haven't mentioned that you'd like to hear about. Please feel free to use the Q&A box and ask any questions you might have, and we'll be happy to answer those for you.
Folks, if you have a question, please go ahead and type it down in the Q&A box provided in this WebEx, or in the chat box for that matter. Now, explain to our audience a little bit, Kyle, how is this tool put out there? How is it sold? Is it sold in licensing? Is it sold in nodes, or how is it sold?
This is licensed based on the number of management agents you need to deploy. So not based on what you have or what it finds, but based on how many devices you want to be able to install a patch on, or remote control. So those agents that are being installed, which would be essentially for any operating system instance that you want to manage, those Windows, Linux, and Mac devices, that would be a license. So it's not based on any other type of counts, or how many switches or routers are in inventory, things like that. It's really just about how many devices you have that you want to be able to have that management capability over. Now, both the mobile So the profiles for the mobile equate to the agents for the desktop in terms of licensing. And the other key component of licensing to mention is that client management is available as a suite. You know, everything that we just kind of flew through, operational rules, you know, reports and compliance and patch and, you know, app deployment, that's part of a suite and a license that gives you all those capabilities at a price. And there's also the ability to break out or a la carte those components. So if you just need remote control, if you just need, you know, the hardware software inventory, you can break that down from a licensing perspective so that you still based on the number of agents, but you're only licensing, you know, those agents for remote control or inventory or compliance or whatever the case may be.
And now I know that there were some improvements that they were making with some additional versions that came out for BCM. When it comes to the mobile side of things, have they tackled everything when it comes to the Droid side of the mobile business, or are they still working on that?
They are still working on the Android management. It does, you know, provide you the ability to discover, you know, and know about what's out there, but the Android, of course, are managed differently than Apple. Apple's very specific, and they're in the process of working on, and that's due to be out this year, the Android, you know, update, the next release of client management, whether that becomes 12.8 or 13, I'm not sure yet. But that is the next big deliverable, is to provide that additional capability to manage Android just like they do with the iOS. But it's very specific in the way iOS and Android do that. iOS was tackled first just from a pure, you know, percentage of the marketplace perspective, but Android's on the way.
And that's good to hear. I know a lot of our folks out there have been waiting on that for some time, and I know BMC's been working on that. One of the other things that I want to bring up and talk a little bit about is ITSM integration. Now, BCM, correct me if I'm wrong, it can pretty much integrate with just about anything out there when it comes to ITSM tools. Is that on point? Yeah,
absolutely. And of course, there's canned or out-of-the-box integrations for the BMC service desk, like Footprints, Remedy Force, Remedy, but there's also just a simple, you know, REST and SOAP API that's open and available, so you can go in and create the same type of integration to other third-party. It doesn't even have to be IT service management, so it could be any kind of external app or database that would have a need, or you'd want to share, you know, any of this software or hardware information from, maybe a purchasing system or something like that, to be able to maybe let them know automatically if license counts have been exceeded, and you want to, you know, pass that data off to another application and let them automatically cut, you know, some type of an order or, you know, PO for that based on that event. So that could certainly be set up.
Okay, so Gabe asks, what about Linux and also additionally Macs? And this is from Gabe Scripts.
Yes, both Linux and Macs are supported as well. So they have agents for all three, 32 and 64-bit, all across the board, Windows, Linux, Macs. So you can use, you know, deploy the appropriate agent to the right, you know, operating system and give you, you know, the capabilities. There are different capabilities for the Linux environment in terms of, you know, some things aren't available in Linux, like remote control. You can manage, you know, everything from, you know, deploying applications to, you know, doing inventory, but there are certain elements like the remote control for Linux that are not available just due to the differences in the graphics in that particular case.
Folks, if you do have a question, please type it in our chat area or our Q&A section of this WebEx, and Kyle will be more than happy to answer that for you. Now, what are some of the other things that might be on the roadmap that you can enlighten our audience with as to where BCM is going in the near future, Kyle?
I think the other big components that are being worked on more or less across the board is a tighter level of integration, as well as more out-of-the-box, let's call it automation, in terms of being able to interact with, whether it be Remedy Force or Footprints or Remedy or some other ITSM tool or some other application, as I mentioned, providing additional capabilities in that regard. I think when it comes to the actual endpoint management piece, the inventory and software deployment, OS deployment, things like that, you're going to find that you'll see little increments and changes here and there, and there'll always be updates, of course, to the user interface and making things easier and doing more with wizards and prompts and helping users navigate, because that's usually the biggest challenge for people is these tasks are not necessarily incredibly complicated. It's really about knowing where to go and where was that button I need to find, that checkbox I need to check. And so you'll always see updates like that, but I think the core tech, every application gets pushed by every tool about the same. Everybody does inventory the same. They're doing the same WMI queries and things like that. That really hasn't changed in about probably at least 15 years or so. Any groundbreaking leap in capability. So what they focus on now to make things better and more efficient is how do we take what we're doing with client management and leverage it with the service desk to create those things like the automated incidents when an event's detected, like a prohibited application or a compliance violation, or to create some type of renewal notice or ticket for purchase, the renewals team to renew that support agreement or warranty, things like that. And so I think you're going to see a lot more of that type of functionality coming down the road across the board for any kind of integrated app, so that you can leverage all the information that's here in a broader fashion with other tools.
Great stuff, and very much appreciated there, Kyle. And Gabe, thank you for your questions. I did receive your request for a link to the video. As soon as it's available, we'll go ahead and make sure that you get that link. Anyone else who may want a copy of this presentation, please go ahead and email me directly at rich.longo@flycastpartners.com. That's rich.longo@flycastpartners.com, or reach out to us at 844-FLYCAST. That's 844-359-2278. Kyle, I think we're going to go ahead and call this a wrap. I appreciate your time today, sir, taking time out of your busy schedule. Thank you.
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure.
All right, and to the audience, thank you for taking time out of your busy day, folks. We look forward to seeing you on our next presentation. Enjoy the rest of your week.